West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
As we reported here just a couple of weeks ago, Putin has just put his foot on the neck of one of the last remaining Russian language news organizations, an independent news organization called Meduza. Meduza wasn't even able to operate inside Russia at all. They're based outside Russia, but they cover Russia and they publish in the Russian language. Putin has just declared that even though they are not in Russia, Meduza is not allowed inside Russia anymore. And beyond that, he's declared them to be effectively almost like a terrorist organization, at least a criminal enterprise. Putin has legally branded the news organization Meduza an undesirable organization, which means anyone in Russia who reads anything from Meduza or shares it online or gives them money, subscribes to them, donates, even anybody who gives an interview to a Meduza reporter for their reporting, they could be arrested for that too. That could be seen as a criminal act. And as we reported here a couple of weeks ago, the Meduza staff is defiant. They're scared, but defiant. Their staff put out a statement in response to this action by Putin saying, quote, "We'd like to tell you that our new undesirable status doesn't worry us, that it means nothing, but that would be untrue. We are afraid. We fear for our readers and for those who have collaborated with Meduza for many years. We fear for our loved ones and our friends. But we believe in what we do. We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in a democratic Russia. The stronger the pressure, the tougher we will resist it." That was 2 weeks ago. And indeed, tonight, 2 weeks hence, 2 weeks after we first brought you that report, Meduza is still there. They still exist. I mean, tonight you can look at them online, meduza.io. They offer English language translations of their reporting. Here they are tonight online, publishing independent accounts of the death toll of Russian soldiers in Ukraine, which of course is something you will never get from Russian state media. Here's something they posted earlier today, an account of a report on Putin being too afraid now to travel by air. He is now reportedly only traveling by heavily armored train. Traveling by train instead of by plane means that nobody can monitor his flight data. They also have reportedly painted this train so that it's a stealth operation. It now looks just like a regular Russian railways train, except you can tell it's the special Putin train because it has 2 extra axles to deal with all the extra weight because it is heavily armored. And also all the other trains have to move and get out of its way because it doesn't stop at any stations. You can find that report tonight at meduza.io. Meduza is still there. They are still working, still piecing it together under threat. As every single independent news organization in Russia has now been shut down or criminalized or forced out of that country. And this is the authoritarian playbook, right? I mean, this isn't just Russia. This is authoritarianism. You can't have total dictatorial control of a country as long as that country still has, you know, an independent source of fact or information or perspective or, God forbid, scrutiny or criticism of the dear leader. If you're going to have unitary control of a country, you must get rid of the free press. It is a systematic thing for authoritarians, and it is the same for authoritarians everywhere. I mean, you might remember a couple of years ago, remember the Nobel Peace Prize a couple of years ago went to two people who didn't know each other, even though they do the same type of work in two different parts of the world. It went to an editor from Russia, the man on the right, and an editor from the Philippines, the woman on the left. These two shared the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021. Well, by the following year, by 2022, in the Philippines, her news organization was ordered shut down by the Duterte administration. It was ordered shut down in June. By July, she personally was sentenced to prison in the Philippines. The action was even quicker in Russia. Again, this is the editor of the Philippines entity and that Russian entity sharing that Nobel Peace Prize in 2021. By March 2022, his Russian news organization, Novaya Gazeta, was forced out of Russia. That was in March 2022. In April 2022, he was attacked physically on a train. The U.S. government said it was the work of Russian intelligence. Dmitry Muratov then put his Nobel Peace Prize medal up for auction with the proceeds to benefit Ukrainian refugees from the war. He raised over $100 million doing that. But attacking the press, attacking any source of information, of expertise, authority, anything that can rationally offer an authoritative, credible perspective other than that of the dear leader, right? You got to get rid of that. That's the playbook. And I think it's much easier for us to see this far away than it is for us to see it close up. Right? Particularly when you can see it happening not just in one other country, you can see it happening basically the same way in a whole bunch of different countries, where the only thing those countries have in common is that they have authoritarian leaders. Right? So you see attacks on the press in Russia under their authoritarian leader, and you see attacks on the press in the Philippines under their authoritarian leader. You also see it in Hungary under their authoritarian leader. In Hungary, the way their leader, Viktor Orban, did it was he got his party and oligarchs and loyalists close to him to just forcibly take over ownership of about 80% of the media, 80% of the entire media landscape in the nation of Hungary. Then the remaining 20%, the remaining independent press that they didn't outright own, they started just arbitrarily revoking the licenses of those entities to operate, calling them, what else? Fake news. Viktor Orban in Hungary, just like Vladimir Putin in Russia, he also led his country into a full-blown moral panic about gay people and trans people. And in both countries, they used that in particular as a way to not just hurt and scapegoat queer people, they used it as a way to consolidate yet more control over the media and over schools at all levels. In Orban's case, he then led a moral panic about schools themselves, declaring war on the one truly prestigious, internationally influential graduate school in Hungary, a school called Central European University. Central European University is very influential and important in Hungary. It had an important publishing house, a really important library, a very important and highly ranked law school. Viktor Orban couldn't stand that. He demonized it. He forced that university out of Hungary altogether in 2019. This past year, he took control of 11 more universities. And then after eating his way through the media and eating his way through academia, just like Putin, he then ate the judiciary too. Orban forced out judges in huge numbers and then appointed all their replacements. And then he just created a whole new court system in which he appointed everyone in it. And they all report to him, including him deciding which cases go to which judges on an individual level, on his own say-so. Once he got complete control of the judiciary, he wrote himself a new constitution in which he gave himself the power to do all the things that had previously been struck down as unconstitutional when his country used to have real courts. It is easier to see it. It is easier for us as Americans to see these patterns when they're farther away, right? When we can see them in other countries, particularly when we can see them happening simultaneously in different countries that are all run by authoritarian leaders. And, the patterns aren't that hard to discern because you see the same ones in history that you see in modern life. All authoritarians kind of do all the same things. Authoritarian rule is a pretty simple thing, right? Basic idea of authoritarian rule is I'm in charge, nobody else gets a say. If that's your goal, your roadmap basically only has one road on it. Set about making sure that nobody else has a say. Set about undermining and disempowering any other institution, any other entity that might challenge you or tell the truth about what you're doing. Undermine it, disempower it, take it over, shut it down, ultimately kill it off. It's the same pattern everywhere. It's the same playbook everywhere. And that is why it is unnerving to see elements of the American right going for it in the small ways where they can, too. They can't do it federally, but they're doing it in the states wherever they can, right? I mean, what's called Central European University in Viktor Orban's Hungary might reasonably be called the New College of Florida here in the United States, where the ambitious hard right Republican governor of that state moved quickly from stoking a moral panic about gay people and trans people to asserting ideological control of education broadly, and then demonizing and taking over one scapegoat college in particular. You might also see some of this at work just today in West Virginia. NPR reporting on how Republican Governor Jim Justice in West Virginia has declared war on West Virginia public broadcasting, which is increasingly important as a news source in West Virginia, particularly as the news business has led to the collapse of lots of local news gathering operations. But at West Virginia Public Broadcasting, Jim Justice has decided that's got to go too. So he's gotten rid of the professional leadership. He installed his own communications director as the new CEO. And now they've started firing reporters who have reported on scandals and failures in Governor Justice's administration. And I could describe that West Virginia situation as a scandal. I think for most Americans who value the idea of a free and independent press, it would be seen as a scandal. But just watch. If what Jim Justice is doing with the media in West Virginia, if that starts getting national attention, just watch. Other Republican governors will see what he's doing and try to emulate it themselves. Because this is what's in style right now on the American far right. It is a race to outdo each other with this stuff now. And we know where it ends. We've seen this playbook lots of different places. We can see it all around the world.
It is Tuesday, the 14th of February of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. You know that a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. Except now, Viktor Orban has taken our great smoked Hungarian paprika and imbued it with something rather negative now, hasn't he? Well, at least we can feel at home knowing that there's Viktor Orban's running states here in the great United States. The only question is, which one is going to secede first? I don't think it's going to be South Carolina this time. It's going to be one of these others down there. Yeah, down there below the Mason-Dixon line. Yep. So how are you on this fine Valentine's Day? You know, if it is Valentine's Day, at least here in the great United States, it just means there's a bunch of people dead from another mass shooting, and that is how you can tell America is your sweetheart. Smooch, smooch. Yep. There's a lot of love going around, I know. Here, have a gun. Jesus. And then these same, violent actors who are legislating. Oh, no, we can't have red flag laws. Well, why is that? because apparently wife-beating murderous husbands have a right to a gun so they can continue being wife-beating murderous husbands. I love the excuse the courts had. Oh, well, you know, wife-beating was legal back when they wrote the Constitution. Was it? Was it still morally correct? Give me a break. These are the people that, like, rewrite laws that go totally against science. In fact, so much so they're writing laws so that you can't even teach science. Viktor Orban's running these states. All right. Got to start somewhere. It's about time that I'm sorry. I'm preaching to the choir. I apologize. You don't need to hear me go on and another jag about all these Nazis taking over America. But let me just say this. There's a bunch of Nazis taking over America. Run for your lives. I would never say run for your lives. I say punch the Nazis. All right? There's an Indiana Jones movie coming up, and the first thing they do in terms of the advertisement is having them punch Nazis. It's one of the main reasons why I've always liked the Indiana Jones movie franchise, in spite of its inaccuracies, its inherent jingoism, a little bit of misogyny. You know what you gonna do? But the thing that gave it like an endearing quality was the punching of the Nazis. Okay. If you don't like seeing a good Nazi punching, I have some grave questions about your character as an American. How do you like them apples, Marjorie? And that Berbert babe. Yeah, boy, I love how she likes to lay down the religious edicts. Probably in, 8-inch spiked heels, some black leather, and don't call it satanic. It occurs to me that people are really upset with Rihanna and her halftime show being so over-sexualized and satanic. Fox News and Gutterfeld and these others are saying, oh, yeah, well, she is all red. And then they have these, white, all around her and, fallen angels. And, white fallen angels. And then here comes this red thing like Satan. It's Satan. And I got to tell you, I watched that dance routine. And if you look closely, you'll find out that all of those white-clad dancers were sperm and she was an ovum. And then she revealed she was pregnant. So what's the big deal? You'd think these right-to-lifers would love that. Oh, no. Not when a black woman is involved, especially a very successful and sexy black woman. Just remember, the rules are that a sexy performance by a black woman is over-sexualized. But one that's a little crass, with a woman in a Catholic schoolgirl uniform, don't even mention it. I mean, what's wrong with that? 8-year-old beauty pageants, dressing them up and putting makeup on them. Don't talk to me about over-sexualized. Please. But like I said, that's how you can tell America is your sweetheart, because you got a lot of sweethearts running around. I don't know. Seems like they've stolen our most sacred virtues of what it is to be an American. Yeah, that's right. Pastry. I prefer the Berliners myself because of the creamy inside. All right. Well, what do we have in store for you today here in this fabulous salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin here in the Bistro Cafe, because the chef's table comes at the end here in America because we do everything backwards. And we love it. Well, on the rest of the menu, after the authoritarian patterns by authoritarians around the world showing up in U.S. governors, right-wing U.S. governors with an authoritarian bent. All right. Well, on the rest of the menu, one of the first black officers to lead a special forces team in combat will receive the prestigious Medal of Honor. only 60 years after his commanding officer first recommended him. Yeah, somehow his file kept getting lost. How'd that happen? Yep, well, 11 states are considering a right to repair bills for... 11 states are considering right to repair bills for farming equipment, because you can't just repair your farming equipment anymore. You think you own it? Jesus. And workers get state legislator support for an Atlantic City casino smoking ban. Well, it's about time. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Iran released an award-winning filmmaker more than 6 months after arresting him for criticizing the government. And Argentina says organized crime groups are spurring Russian birth tourism in the country. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across from that chat room link to the left, there is the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps, because the bills keep arising, and we need to keep paying, because we've been doing it for a while. We can't give it up. I'm sorry. Our little powerhouse of resistance continues to be so because of your generosity. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, how about that? And send those funds our way once a month. Well, that really helps us pay those bills I just mentioned, and lets us continue being this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed against not only democracy here in the great United States of America, but democracy around the world. We can't let them do it. So thank you anyway. All joking aside, your generosity really has helped, so thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, Spoutable, you can do so by going to @Netroots Radio at those aforementioned sites. And Tom takes care of those platforms, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable @Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary 10 minutes before showtime and get that posted up on social media. And you can find the full articles by the actual reporters doing the reportage there. You can read it right there. You can also follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest, and I'll get the show pages on Mastodon and Spoutable real soon. I'm serious. I swear. And you can also, please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Darlene Superville. One of the first black officers to lead a special forces team in combat will receive the nation's highest award for bravery in battle, nearly 60 years after his commanding officer first recommended him for the prestigious Medal of Honor. President Joe Biden called retired U.S. Army Colonel Paris Davis on Monday yesterday to inform him that he will receive the Medal of Honor for his remarkable heroism during the Vietnam War. In a statement issued afterward, Davis, age 83, said the telephone call had prompted a wave of memories of the men and women I served with in Vietnam. He thanked his family, friends in the military, and volunteers for keeping the story alive, along with Biden and military leaders. I think often of those fateful 19 hours on June 18th of 1965 and what our team did to make sure we left no man behind on that battlefield, said Davis, who is originally from Cleveland and currently lives in Alexandria, Virginia. Davis, then a captain, was recommended for the Medal of Honor by his commanding officer by distinguishing himself on that June morning during a pre-dawn raid on a North Vietnamese army camp in Bong Son. Every American there was wounded during a major enemy counterattack. Davis repeatedly sprinted into an open rice paddy to rescue each member of his team using his pinky finger to fire his rifle after his hand was shattered by an enemy grenade. His entire team survived. The paperwork recommending Davis for the Medal of Honor disappeared at least twice. He eventually was awarded a Silver Star Medal, the third highest military combat medal, but members of Davis's team have long argued that race was a factor in his treatment. Davis retired in 1985, having attained the rank of colonel. In early of 2021, Christopher Miller, then the acting defense secretary, ordered an expedited review of the case. He argued in an opinion column in June of 2021 that awarding Davis the Medal of Honor would address an injustice. Some issues in our nation rise above partisanship, Miller wrote. The Davis case meets that standard. Jesse Badane of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. On Colorado's northeastern plains, where the pencil straight horizon divides golden fields and blue sky, a farmer named Danny Wood scrambles to plant and harvest proso millet, dryland corn and winter wheat in short seasonal windows. That is, until his high-tech Steiger 370 tractor conks out. The tractor's manufacturer does not allow Wood to make certain fixes himself, and last spring his fertilizing operations were stalled for 3 days before the servicer arrived to add a few lines of missing computer code for $950. That's where they have us over the barrel. It's more like we are renting it than buying it, said Wood, who spent $300,000 on the used tractor. Wood's plight, echoed by farmers across the country, has pushed lawmakers in Colorado and 10 other states to introduce bills that would force manufacturers to provide the tools, software, parts, and manuals needed for farmers to do their own repairs, thereby avoiding steep labor costs and delays that imperil profits. The manufacturers and the dealers have a monopoly on that repair market because it's lucrative, said Representative Brianna Titone, a Democrat and one of the bill's sponsors. Farmers just want to get their machine going again. In Colorado, the legislation is largely being pushed by Democrats while their Republican colleagues find themselves stuck in a tough spot, torn between right-leaning farming constituents asking to be able to repair their own machines and the manufacturing businesses that oppose the idea. I wonder who pays them the most. We'll find out, won't we? The manufacturers argue that changing the current practice with this type of legislation would force companies to expose trade secrets. They also say it would make it easier for farmers to tinker with the software and illegally crank up the horsepower and bypass the emissions controller like they really care, risking operators' safety and the environment like they really care. Similar arguments around intellectual property have been leveled against the broader campaign called Right to Repair, which has picked up steam across the country, crusading for the right to fix everything from iPhones to hospital ventilators during the pandemic. In 2011, Congress passed a law ensuring that car owners and independent mechanics, not just authorized dealerships, had access to the necessary tools and information to fix the problems. 10 years later, the Federal Trade Commission pledged to beef up its right to repair enforcement at the direction of President Joe Biden. And just last year, Tarrytown sponsored and promised Colorado's first right to repair law, empowering people who use wheelchairs with the tools and information to fix them. From the right to repair farm equipment, from thin tractors used between grapevines to behemoth combines for harvesting grain that can cost over $500,000, Colorado is joined by 10 states, including Florida, Maryland, Missouri, New Jersey, Texas, and Vermont. Many of the bills are finding bipartisan support, said Nathan Proctor, who leads Public Interest Research Group's National Right to Repair campaign. But in Colorado's Committee on Agriculture, Democrats pushed the bill forward in a 9-4 vote along party lines, with Republicans in opposition, even though the bill's second sponsor is Republican Representative Ron Weinberg. Of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Atlantic City casino dealers pushing for a smoking ban received support from several state lawmakers yesterday, Monday, at a long-awaited hearing on a bill that would end smoking inside the 9 casinos. Dealers, cocktail servers, and other casino workers, some of them with breathing ailments and other health problems they suspect are related to secondhand smoke from casino patrons, testified before a state Senate panel in favor of a law that would close a loophole in the state's 2006 indoor smoking law. The measure was written specifically to exempt casinos from bans on smoking indoors. Currently, smoking is permitted on 25% of a casino floor in Atlantic City. Although no action was taken on the bill, numerous lawmakers supported a ban, calling it long overdue, do you think? Whether to ban smoking is one of the most controversial issues, not only in Atlantic City casinos, but in other states, where workers have expressed concern about secondhand smoke. They are waging similar campaigns in Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. It's immoral of the owners of the casinos to think their employees are expendable, said Senator Joseph Vitale, the committee's chairperson. If you smell it, it's in your lungs. Democratic Senator Richard Cody was acting governor in 2006 when the indoor smoking law was adopted. Unfortunately, to get it passed, I had to agree that casinos could still have smoking, he said, adding that it's time for the state to implement a casino smoking ban. Atlantic City's main casino workers union drove 4 van loads of workers to the hearings as well, taking 60 of them to the state capitol as a counterpoint to those calling for a smoking ban. Those workers backed the industry's position that a smoking ban would place Atlantic City at a competitive disadvantage with casinos in neighboring states. That's what they said back in the 90s. Out here in California, when we wanted, smoke-free workplaces like, at Fridays and other places. The issue is the most divisive in Atlantic City, where even though a casino revenue matched its all-time high of $5.2 billion last year, only half that amount was won from in-person gamblers. The other half was won online, and must be shared with third parties, including tech platforms and sports books. Support for a smoking ban is widespread among New Jersey lawmakers. Identical smoking ban bills are sponsored or co-sponsored by 51 Assembly members and 23 state senators, representing a bipartisan majority in both chambers. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths in the world. Why? Because it's difficult to detect in its early stages and hard to treat once it's discovered. The Lung Cancer Initiative at Johnson & Johnson is working to reverse that trend. And to do so, it needs not just doctors and researchers, but engineers. Hannah McEwen is the head of engineering sciences for the group. She recently sat down with Scientific American Custom Media to explain the role engineering can play in transforming lung cancer diagnosis and treatment. When one hears about the field of engineering, it's not always associated with medicine. When Hannah McEwen started her engineering career, she did so thinking about possibilities to apply the principles and problem-solving techniques of engineering to biology and medicine to ultimately improve healthcare.
If I go back to my early days, even back at my university, my undergrad, I really began to fall in love with this idea that engineering can really be used to transform a patient's health.
That love blossomed at her first internship, working on electronic devices to provide a sense of sound to people who are profoundly deaf or hard of hearing. She says those cochlear implants were a striking example of how engineering can improve the quality of life.
We apply physics and mechanics and electrical engineering, and it can transform someone's life. From one day being able to hear nothing to then being able to hear voices and people and sounds and really have a transformational impact.
Hannah eventually joined Johnson & Johnson, where she spent more than a decade developing orthopedic implants designed to help people walk and move again. Over time, she started collaborating with colleagues across the company on new and aspirational projects.
We don't just think about waiting till someone has a disease and look at treating them then, but what can we do to intervene earlier in that disease progression?
Lung cancer is an ideal disease for this line of thinking. It's the most lethal form of cancer today because it's a highly complex disease. As part of the Lung Cancer Initiative at Johnson & Johnson, Hannah has assembled a team of engineers to take on this challenge.
They all come from fairly diverse, different backgrounds, working in different parts of healthcare, different procedures, not all with an oncology background, but really have a passion and innovation for how do you start with a problem, start with an unmet need, and then identify whether there are technologies either from within J&J or people who are really good at building partnerships outside of J&J as well.
Engineers are helping to address lung cancer? Hannah says, of course, it's about designing new technologies to identify and treat the disease. And it's more than that.
It's also about how do you even do a surgical or an interventional procedure to be able to diagnose what someone's health may be and then be able to repair or treat the condition that they have. It's the technologies, it's the physical and mechanical solutions that are used to treat things that are going on in the human body.
Hannah and her team, for example, often observe lung cancer procedures and ask questions.
We will often look at not just what the device is doing that the physician is trying to use in a procedure, but how is that handled? Who is the person who hands that device to the physician? When we observe other things going on, we may see there are plenty of other staff in that room who also are utilizing different tools in that procedure, and we get to observe firsthand the different challenges they have.
Those observations help Hannah's team to not only develop a specific tool, but also identify the need to develop additional technologies or new ways of using instruments that already exist. For example, could a robotic bronchoscope do more than just enable the doctor to take a sample of a lesion in someone's lung? What if you could have the ability one day to identify a cancer right there and then?
That at the time of the procedure is helping me see that my biopsy needle, the lesion it's in, I can look at it, as though it's under a microscope and see that this is definitely a cancer that I should do something about. How can we decide right there and then, yes, I have a good sample and it is cancer, and then maybe one day go ahead and actually treat it in that same procedure?
In this future state, once cancer has been confirmed, the doctor could, at the same time, inject medicine or apply energy to begin treatment of the tumor. Hannah says this approach may not only be more efficient, but it's also her hope patients would experience less of the undesirable effects commonly seen with systemic therapies.
We are building together solutions that have mechanical device, medtech, and informatics solutions with the biological or pharmaceutical treatment modalities that we may use to be able to change someone's health. That's what motivates me to come to work every day. It's the opportunity to change a disease, and it's the incredible privilege it is to work with the diverse teams to do that.
Hannah says she's excited to see the Lung Cancer Initiative working to one day help transform the lives of millions of patients. She's working with her team, collaborators, and across Johnson & Johnson every day to make that future happen as soon as possible. Hannah McEwen is the head of engineering sciences for the Lung Cancer Initiative at Johnson & Johnson. The Lung Cancer Initiative was formed in 2018 to unleash the full potential of science and technology to change the trajectory of this complex disease. This podcast was produced by Scientific American Custom Media and made possible through the support of the Lung Cancer Initiative at Johnson & Johnson.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind. Like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest.
Uh-oh.
Or that time you forgot to roll up your windows in the car wash.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a remote control would have come in handy then. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. But prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Life doesn't come with a remote control. Yikes! So you're on your own with the wasps. You have the power to take control of prediabetes. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
There are industries that occasionally do something rotten. And there are industries like big oil, big pharma, and big tobacco that persistently do rotten things. Then there is the nursing home industry, where rottenness has become a core business principle. The end-of-life experience can be rotten enough on its own, with an assortment of natural indignities bedeviling us, and good nursing homes help gentle this time. In the past couple of decades, though, an entirely unnatural force has come to dominate the delivery of aged care: profiteering corporate chains and Wall Street speculators. The very fact that this essential and sensitive social function, which ought to be the domain of health professionals and charitable enterprises, is now called an industry, reflects a total perversion of its purpose. Some 70% of nursing homes are now corporate operations run by absentee executives who have no experience in nursing homes and who are guided by the market imperative of maximizing investor profits. They constantly demand, quote, efficiencies from their facilities, which invariably means reducing the number of nurses, which invariably reduces care, which means more injuries, illness, and deaths. As one nursing expert rightly says, it's criminal. But it's not against the law, since the industry's lobbying front, a major donor to congressional campaigns, effectively writes the law, which allows corporate hustlers to provide only one nurse on duty no matter how many patients are in the facility. When a humane nurse staffing requirement was proposed last year, the lobbying group furiously opposed it, and Congress dutifully bowed to industry profits over Grandma's decent end time. After all, Granny doesn't make campaign contributions. This is Jim Hightower saying, so, as a health policy analyst bluntly puts it, the only kind of groups that seem to be interested in investing in nursing homes are bad actors. To help push for better, contact theconsumervoice.org. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many." When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers. And we will be cloudy with those snow showers, and it'll be changing to rain much later in the afternoon, with an expected high of around 40 degrees, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and mainly clear tonight with lows in the low 20s, winds light and variable, and then some clouds in the morning tomorrow. Will give way to mainly sunny skies for the afternoon with highs in the mid-40s. And it looks like we'll have that type of weather until the beginning of next week, when it looks like we may have considerable days bringing with it considerable snowfall. And I must say, it is quite piled up out there at the moment, and it looks like we'll have a snowy and rain mix for the next several hours, though right now, big flakes be a-fallen. Pollen is rated as none here in the little town of Rogue River, and the air quality index for the region is good at 35 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.08 inches. Visibility is at 1 1/4 mile. And relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 54 degrees and fair. Paris is 55 and sunny. Rome is 60 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 36 and cloudy. Kabul is 36 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 62 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 37 degrees and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and sunny with a beach advisory. Do not turn your back on the ocean. And New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. But the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Iran has released an award-winning filmmaker more than 6 months after arresting him for criticizing the government. Mohammad Rusaloff, whose 2020 film There Is No Evil won the top prize at the Berlin International Film Festival, is one of several prominent artists, athletes, and other celebrities detained in recent months for criticizing authorities. He was arrested in July for criticizing the government's crackdown on protests in the southwestern city of Abadan after a deadly building collapse. 2 months later, nationwide protests broke out after a 22-year-old woman died in custody of the country's morality police. The Sharg newspaper, which is associated with the country's reform movement, said Rusaloff had recently been furloughed from prison and was formally released without specifying the dates or providing further information. There was no official comment. Earlier this month, Iran released famed director Jafar Panahi, who was arrested in July after inquiring about the detention of Rusaloff and another colleague. Authorities also released Iranian actress Taraneh Aladutsi on bail after she was detained for criticizing the crackdown on the latest protests. At least 529 protesters have been killed and nearly 20,000 arrested since protests began, according to human rights activists in Iran. Iranian authorities, though, have not released official figures for those killed or arrested. There Is No Evil, which tells 4 stories loosely connected to the use of the death penalty in Iran, won the Golden Bear Prize in Berlin in 2020. Rusaloff wasn't there to accept the award due to a travel ban imposed on him by Iranian authorities.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Adam Jordan of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Argentine officials have blamed organized mafias for promoting birth tourism in the South American country by Russian mothers-to-be amid a boom in numbers traveling there since the invasion of Ukraine, looking to get their children citizenship. Thousands of expectant Russian mothers have arrived in Argentina over the last year, including 33 on a single flight last week, which threw a spotlight on the trend. Some were detained, and officials launched a crackdown on the practice. Florencio Carignano, head of Argentina's immigration office, wrote on Twitter on Sunday that mafia organizations were profiting by offering packages to obtain our passport to people who do not actually want to reside in our country. Russians can travel to Argentina without a visa, where all newborns are granted citizenship automatically, making it an attractive destination for so-called birth tourism. We detected a significant increase in the entry of Russian citizens in recent months. That is why we decided to investigate and interviewed 350 of them who were in advanced pregnancy, Carignano said. In the interviews, we discovered that this organization offers people, in exchange for a large sum of money, a birth tourism package with the Argentine passport as the main reason for the trip. Carignano said the immigration office had passed data related to the case to the country's judiciary with the aim of defending the integrity of Argentina's passport issuance. Well, welcome to Florida, Argentina. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.